Hey guys, welcome back to DCS World. I'm Spudknocker, as always. And today I wanted to discuss a topic that's definitely going to elicit a lot of strong opinions in the comments section down below. Now that topic is of course upcoming and potentially upcoming modules for DCS World and how they fit into a greater framework / theme that's already embedded in the game across various modules, terrains, AI ground units, aircraft that are controlled by the AI, and many other facets of the game. Now I definitely want to see your guys' opinion on this topic down below because I have identified a massive glaring hole within this framework when we look at existing and upcoming modules for DCS. Now the backdrop that we're going to be using for this discussion video is we're going to be exploring Lake Al-Assad, which resides in northern Syria. This lake then drains into the Euphrates River, which snakes its way across the arid desert of eastern Syria and into Iraq, where it meets up with the Tigris River and creates the Fertile Crescent between the two rivers where large cities like Mosul and Baghdad reside. The two rivers of course meet near Basra in southern Iraq and create the Shatt al-Arab waterway, the main point of contention between Iran and Iraq that created the first Arabian Gulf War back in the 1980s. It's very important to know geography because geography leads to where people actually live. The places where people reside and congregate creates culture, and cultures in turn create conflict and confrontation between multiple groups of people, such as all of the conflicts that we see across the Middle East today. Now the aircraft we're using today is a Royal Jordanian Air Force F-16A MLU that started off its life with the Netherlands Air Force and was recently upgraded and bought by the Jordanian Air Force as a cheaper way of bolstering its numbers of F-16s rather than buying new build airframes from Lockheed Martin. So let's go ahead and hop in the cockpit and get started. Alrighty guys, we'll go ahead and turn off the autopilot so we can start to follow this very windy and snaking lake as it starts its way down south towards the mouth of the Euphrates River. So, as a little bit of a disclaimer here, for any developers who are watching, because I'd love it if developers did weigh in on this topic, this is not a massive criticism and it's not throwing any hate or, dislike of anything you guys have done in DCS World. It's just an idea and a discussion of a massive hole in this framework that I've identified within DCS World. So let's go ahead and talk about the existing modules in DCS. I'm going to be more or less referring to full fidelity modules for the most part for this video, and that's because most DCS World players, or at least hardcore DCS World players, they come to DCS for the full fidelity aircraft, not necessarily the Flaming Cliffs aircraft. And so if we look at what we've already got for the modern age of aircraft in DCS, we've got a full fidelity set of Teen Series aircraft. We've got a full fidelity and beautiful F-14A and B from Heapler. We have a Flaming Cliffs F-15C at the moment. We have a full fidelity F-16C Fighting Falcon from Eagle Dynamics, along with a full fidelity FA-18C from Eagle Dynamics as well. We also, of course, have the AV-8B Harrier and two versions of the A-10C as well in DCS World for full fidelity modules, and that rounds out a massive portion of the United States Air Arms from the Navy, Marines, and Air Force, along with a whole bunch of Western aligned nations who fly American aircraft in their inventories. So let's also go ahead and talk about some upcoming modules for DCS World. The most exciting upcoming module, in my opinion, for DCS is Razbam's F-15E Strike Eagle. And that's going to fill that hole left in the F-15 slot of American full fidelity modules. I'm glad that it's an F-15E Strike Eagle because I think DCS World pilots tend to gravitate towards wanting a lot of multi-role action from their aircraft, and single-role aircraft I think are not as popular within the DCS World community. And we'll just kind of bring the jet back around to the right here. It also helps that the F-15E Strike Eagle and her rather wacky variants spread across the world, from the F-15I to the F-15S, K, SG, SA, and so on, are some of my favorite jets in the world. And so it's definitely something that I am very much looking forward to, having the Strike Eagle here in DCS. Some other upcoming modules for DCS include aircraft like the A-7E Corsair II, the A-6E Intruder, again from the Heat Blur. I don't know if it's going to be a tram-equipped Intruder. They have not really embellished upon that fact yet, but I'm sure we'll find out in time. But regardless, an A-6E is going to be a ton of fun to do multi-crew with a guy sitting next to you in the cockpit rather than behind you or in front of you. That'll be a ton of fun. I can't wait to reenact heading downtown to Sam City from Flight of the Intruder, that's for sure. We also, of course, are having the F-8 Crusader come to DCS World in the guise of a full fidelity module, which is absolutely fantastic. I love the F-8. It's such a cool little airplane. And I believe it's going to be the F-8J version, but I could be wrong on that point. So the maps that we have here in DCS World also kind of conform to a theme of being more laid out towards modern military conflicts and potential military conflicts. We've got the Marianas Map, of course, the Caucasus Map, the Persian Gulf Map, and of course the Syria Map, as well as some upcoming maps that are potentially coming to DCS World. The Afghanistan map was kind of sort of announced a few years ago, as well as we have the Falklands map coming up, which is a bit of an outlier because we don't really have much in the way of assets in DCS that actually fit with the theme of that map. But as I look at all of these things rolled together, ground units in DCS, air units, modules that pilots can fly in DCS, terrains that pilots can fly over in DCS, the different geographical areas we can fly over, the geopolitical situations on those areas we fly over, I see a massive, massive gaping hole that I think should be obvious for everybody when it comes to what's missing from DCS World and what's missing from the arsenal of aircraft available for DCS World pilots to fly, learn, and enjoy. And I think that some of you guys probably see the same thing that I do, and this is why I'm making this video. I want to see how many people out there would want to see this aircraft in DCS World. It's an aircraft that has been used by nations on almost every map in DCS World at this point. It's an aircraft that has probably the fourth or fifth most produced combat aircraft ever. It comes from the St. Louis plant from McDonnell Douglas. It's definitely behind the F-16 at this point, and of course the MiG-21 in terms of number of airframes actually produced. However, it probably still rivals the service length of both of those two aircraft. It's a multi-role aircraft, it's a multi-crew aircraft, and it's a jet that is just so iconic and appeals to so many people that I seriously can't believe it's not in DCS World. I think it would sell so many units, and it would definitely finance the effort that was put into building it as a module here in DCS World. Now, this aircraft was at one point in active development by a third-party developer for DCS World, Belsom Tech. They were, of course, absorbed into Eagle Dynamics proper to assist with the development of the FA-18C Hornet, and I assume the F-16C as well. So the aircraft in question here is, of course, I'm sure you guys have definitely guessed it by now. It is the F-4 Phantom II. Such a beautiful and iconic aircraft, flown by Japan, Israel, Iran, Turkey, Greece, the United States, the UK, Germany, so many countries that are depicted and could be depicted on the maps here in DCS World. It's an aircraft that could easily be shoehorned into a Vietnam map, as well as all of the existing maps here in DCS World. It could fill out the entire inventory of the Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force for the Persian Gulf Map, and could be awesome in some sort of a scenario and multiplayer once the Eurofighter and Strike Eagle release, of having all of the inventories of the Persian side and the Arabian side of the Persian Gulf Map fully fleshed out with full fidelity modules. Now, I've seen a lot of people on forums thinking about, like, what version of the F4 would we want? And I've seen a lot of people really want and go for the F4B, J, M, and K version of the F4. However, I don't think that's going to be nearly as appealing to folks as the F4E. Now, the E, of course, has the internal M61 Vulcan cannon, and I think that's just super, super important, because a lot of DCS World players really like that multi-role, and having that integrated gun is going to make it great for close-in dogfighting, as well as strafing ground targets, without having to give up one of your stations, namely the centerline station of your F4, for a SUU-23 gun pod. And those gun pods are really not made for air-to-air work. They're really made for air-to-ground strafing on those original F4s that were gunless. And while there are some land-based air forces that did fly gunless versions of the F4, like the Spanish Air Force flying the F4C, and the Iranian Air Force flying the F4D, with some really cool, modifications and weirdness applied to those F4Ds flown by the IIAF and, of course, the subsequent IRIAF. But the most ubiquitous version used by the most countries is, of course, going to be the F4E. The first Block 1 versions of the F4E were built in 1968 and flew in Vietnam from 1968 through Linebacker 1 and 2 in late 1972. They really are the most iconic variant of the F4 Phantom, the longest serving variant of the F4, and it's an aircraft that I just don't think could ever fail in DCS World, and I'm really surprised that the F4 has been put on the back burner for so long. It's just a jet that I think could do so well in DCS and be just an awesome piece of equipment and history for DCS. Now, the variant, from what I can tell in Facebook posts and old forum posts and things like that, the variant of the F4 that Belson Tech was creating was the ARN 101 upgrade for the F4. So it could use things like the paved spike targeting pod, so it could drop weapons like the GBU-10 and GBU-12, as well as EO guided weapons like the GBU-15 Hobos, as well as the AGM-65 Maverick, as well as a whole slew of upgraded versions of the AIM-7 and AIM-9. But if you just want to take that ARN 101 version of the F4 and shoehorn it into a Vietnam kind of setting, all you got to do is just pull off the upgraded versions of those air-to-air missiles and add in just dumb bombs on the aircraft, and there you go, you've got a Vietnam-era F4. The ARN 101 variant of the F4E actually saw very limited service flying from Incirlik Air Force Base in the very early opening stages of Operation Desert Storm. They were withdrawn pretty darn quickly, and F4Gs took their place, but they did fly a couple strike sorties into very far northern Iraq from bases in Turkey. And of course, the F4E was used by Israel, Turkey, Greece, Japan, in a modified version in the F4F by Germany, and of course extensively by the USAF. It kind of does baffle me that the F4 hasn't been a higher priority for DCS World devs. I think that Eagle Dynamics could definitely make a lot of money making the F4 for DCS, and it would be a very, very worthwhile addition to DCS World. I've seen a lot of forum posts from, Microsoft Flight Simulator purists who fly the F4 in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and said that they would definitely make the jump to DCS if they could have an F4 in DCS World, and it would give them the full swath of capabilities of the F4 that they want, being able to engage ground targets and so much more, as well as real air-to-air combat, all these things that you just can't do in a simulator like Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I'd really, really love to see your guys' opinion. There's an interesting little island in the middle of this lake with a little causeway on it. That could be cool for a little, like, last stand kind of situation. So like I said, I really, really want to see what you guys think of an F4 in DCS World. I think it would plug a lot of gaps that are in the DCS World full fidelity module inventory as of now. I'm so excited and so pumped up seeing all these new work in progress screenshots from Razbam's F-15E Strike Eagle that it really seems like it's really coming along now, and so I'm starting to look forward a little bit more to maybe aircraft beyond the F-15E. And the Eurofighter is going to be super cool to have. Unfortunately, it's going to be air-to-air only, at least to start off with, which is definitely a bummer. But man, an F4 in DCS World would be unparalleled. That would be such an awesome module to have. It would be like the F-14 in a lot of ways. A lot of old technology mixed with some new technology, and just a absolutely ferocious strike aircraft, and a pretty darn good interceptor, and a pretty darn good dogfighter if it is an F4 with a soft wing rather than a hard wing. And I just really love the F4. It's just such an iconic aircraft, and I think that you guys could absolutely enjoy a F4 in DCS's World as well. So if you like the video, oh shit, I did not remember that I had enemy units here at this section of the map. I had totally forgotten about that. This is kind of my little training range I have set up for training pilots in DCS, and I had forgotten that I had put in units on the dam down there. That's a little embarrassing. But like I said, guys, please let me know what you guys think of a DCS World F4 in the comments section down below. And fly safe out there, guys, and of course, please stay healthy. We'll see you in the next one.